Reach your goals at Anytime Fitness, 101 East Highway 260, and we are now accepting silver sneakers.
You are listening to the Brandon Iron Show here on 1420 KMOG. It's a great night here in Basin, Arizona. Currently, it's 86 degrees here at the Radio Ranch under beautiful blue skies. I got a great guest in studio with me right now. Pecos Paul is how we know him. How you doing, Mr. Paul Foster?
Brendan, I'm doing fine. How are you doing? And thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you. Trust me,
pleasure.
the honor is all mine having you on. And just a couple of quick questions before we get everything going. Of course, we know you as Pecos Paul because you've done trades and sales with Rock and Ron for years.
Quite a while.
And how long have you lived here in town?
Moved to Payson in 1980. I was working for an electronics firm in the valley, and got tired of all the smog and all the congestion.
Yeah.
And my in-laws lived in Payson, so I came up and I bought a business and quit my day job down there, and I've been up here ever since.
It's a beautiful place to come.
Oh, I wouldn't live anywhere else.
I'm so glad I came down here.
Yeah.
And I come down here from Colorado, but it's beautiful. I love it. I don't plan on leaving anytime soon.
You couldn't get me out of here if you drove me out.
Now, of course, you're a musician. You've been playing for years. When did you start playing? First, you're one of the founding members of Waylon Jennings. And what did they call you back then? What was the title?
Of the band, you mean?
Yeah.
Waylon Jennings and the Wailers.
And the Wailers.
And the Wailers.
So you're an original Wailer.
Well, pretty much,
There
yeah.
you go. And you played bass in the band.
I did.
And what time did you guys form the band?
I joined Waylon in 1963. I was, well, let me back up a little bit. I was working in Baghdad, Arizona, at the copper mine.
Okay.
And I moved to Phoenix in 1960, late 62 or 63. And I was playing with a little local band in Phoenix. We were playing in Sunny Slope at the Tumbleweed Tavern. Really a neat place to go hide out. And a fella came in, I kind of knew him. His name was Byron Metcalf, who later became Dottie West's husband. Anyway, he came into the club where we were playing, and he said, Waylon's looking for a full-time bass player. And I immediately said, who's Waylon? I'd never heard of him.
Okay.
He said he's playing at a place called Wild Bill's, which is today Handlebar J's, but back then it was called Wild Bill's. And so I went out and talked to him. I forget what day it was.
But is it 1963?
Yeah, yeah, 63. And he said, he did a couple little riffs on the guitar, and he says, can you do this? And I said, yeah, I can do that. And he said, well, can you do this? And I said, yeah, I can do that. He said, well, when can you go to work? And I said, tomorrow. And that's how we got started.
That's
So
a great story.
I went to work with Waylon at Wild Bill's in late 63.
So how long after meeting Waylon did you realize that he was on the tour with Buddy Holly and how, just his musical background? How long until, did it take one day hanging out with him?
Yeah, kind of. We talked about each other and our backgrounds and what we had done. And he told me the story about the plane crash and all that stuff.
So you heard it firsthand, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was kind of scary.
So he actually was hired, Waylon was hired on for the winter tour.
He was Buddy Holly's bass player.
There you go.
Waylon had never played bass before. Waylon was a guitar player.
Well, what happened to the Crickets?
I don't know.
They just didn't tour, and so Waylon joined. And
I would imagine something happened to Buddy's bass player, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah.
But anyway, he handed Waylon a bass and said, here, play it. And Waylon said, well, I had to play it. So that's kind of how that happened.
And firsthand story, what did Waylon say about the crash? Did he ever talk about Buddy?
Let me tell you what happened. The Big Bopper was sick, and Waylon was going to go on the plane with Buddy, but the Bopper was sick and he didn't want to ride on the bus. He wanted to get to the next town as fast as he could because he was not feeling well.
The Big Bopper, Chantilly Lace.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
So Waylon said, well, why don't you go on the plane and I'll ride the bus because you're not feeling well. And the Bopper said, yeah, Waylon, I hope your old bus freezes up. And Waylon jokingly said, yeah, and I hope your old plane crashes.
Wow.
And it wasn't an hour later until that all happened. And
Wow.
You couldn't get Waylon to talk about an airplane or get on an airplane for years.
What a story.
Yeah.
And so when I noticed on the album we're going to listen to in its entirety, you guys did a Buddy Holly song.
Right.
It's All Right, it's on here. And Or is it you do it so easy, don't you?
We do that as well.
And it's just one of those things where I don't know, it'd been one of those things where if I met Waylon, I felt uncomfortable if I ever asked him about Buddy Holly, but that's what I would have done. I would have been like, hey, what's Buddy like?
He talked about it. He was, I think he was proud of the fact that he worked with Buddy, but he felt bad about what he had said about the airplane, even though he said it jokingly.
It's a curse.
Yeah, but if I would have said that, it probably would have bothered me as well.
It would have bothered me,
Sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And even joking around, it is funny. But, he was a nice enough guy to give up his seat on the plane, and that's the best movie he ever did,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, well, yeah. It
Talk about
turned out to
great
be the
movies.
best thing he ever did, yeah, for sure.
So, getting back to JD's, where's JD's at?
JD's is on South Scottsdale Road, just before you go over the bridge going into Tempe. It was built for us, for Waylon, back in the 60s. We were playing, as I said, at Wild Bill's, and a gentleman by the name of Jim Bushel, who owned Magoo's, came out to see us.
And he's the producer of this album.
Yes, and he's the owner of JD's.
Oh, there you go. See, it's all tying together now.
Yeah, so he said, Waylon, if you will sign a 2-year contract to work for me, he said, I will build you a club to your specifications. You can design the sound system and give me 6 months to build a club, and you can work for me for
Wow.
a minimum of 2 years, and then we'll go from there. And that's what happened.
Wow.
So we left Wild Bill's shortly thereafter. We went to a little place called the Cross Keys. It was, do you know where the Safari Hotel was?
I don't. No.
Okay, the Safari Hotel was in the vicinity of Scottsdale Road and Camelback.
Okay, yep.
And there was a little strip mall with a small club in there called the Cross Keys. And we played there kind of in the interim until JD's was built. And then as soon as the club was finished, we went down there.
Well, what's sort of funny is how this whole conversation really got started was a listener sent me photos of Waylon Jennings at JD's, and sure enough, I showed him to Rock and Ron, and in the photos, there you are.
Right.
And he's like, well, look, there's Mr. Paul Foster, and I'm going, you gotta be kidding me. So thanks for Rock and Ron for lining me up with you, who he told me a couple times, that you played with Waylon,
Right.
and it was one of those things where I always wanted to pick your brain about it.
Sure.
And now that these pictures rolled around, these pictures are great, but you showed up with a book full of pictures of you and Waylon,
Right.
and I thought maybe this was like a one of a kind, that you're gonna want this one, but no, you played for years there at JD's, and so there's actually tons of photos with you two together. You guys are always dressed alike, and you guys got matching guitar straps. Your names are on the straps.
There was a Western store in Glendale, Arizona,
Yep.
called Jones Western Store, and they became kind of one of our silent sponsors. And they bought all of our matching uniforms. They gave us each a set of alligator boots, and that's how those uniforms came to be. And you know who designed those uniforms?
No, who?
I did.
You did. I knew it. Look at that. Did you? Well, so did they also give you the guitar straps?
I don't remember. No, I think the guitar straps was made by the same gentleman that put the cover on Waylon's guitar.
Do you still have your guitar strap?
No, I don't think so.
No, just lost.
When
somewhere.
I left, my bass and my amp, Waylon didn't want me to take it because his brother took my place in the band.
Jimmy.
No,
Right? No, Tommy.
Tommy. There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
And so he asked me if I would sell him my bass and my amp because he didn't want to change the sound.
Mm-hmm.
And as I recall,
left your strap.
the strap was on the bass when I left it there. So anyway, I sold Waylon my bass and my amp when I left, and I had to go buy another one, which I did. And so that's kind of how that happened. And back to Waylon's guitar for just a minute, because we just talked
It's
about
one of the most famous guitars. Where is that guitar now? Do you know? Is it in the museum? Is it in the National Museum?
No. Let me think of his name in a minute. He's from Australia.
Keith Urban?
Keith Urban.
Okay.
Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman.
Yep.
Nicole bought that guitar for Keith a couple of years ago.
How much did she pay for that guitar?
Well, I heard it was $40,000.
Whoa. And it belongs in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That thing belongs sealed, and no one can ever touch it again. But the history of the guitar, so she just paid $40,000 for it. Where did he get the guitar originally?
I'll tell you the story very quickly. Like I said earlier, I had been working in Baghdad in the early 60s, and I had a friend, his name was Sonny Fitch.
Okay.
And Sonny was a local musician, and we became friends. And I had moved to Phoenix, and he came through town one day and wanted to borrow $20 because he didn't have gas money to get home. I had known Sonny a long time. I wasn't about to loan him $20 because I knew him too well. Anyway, I said, "You got anything in your car you want to trade or sell or whatever?" And he said, "I don't know, let's go look around." So we went out this old car, opened the trunk, and laid under the spare tire was the neck of a Fender guitar. So we dug it out, and I said, "I'll give you $20 for the old guitar." So I got it out, cleaned it up, and every time Waylon would come over to my apartment, he'd pick it up, play it, and just fell in love with it. Wanted me to sell it to him, and I wouldn't do it. So we were at JD's at the time. So the bartender at Wild Bill's was a leather worker.
Okay.
So I took the guitar out to Wild Bill's, and his name was Howard, and I had him put that leather cover on it. It cost me $40. So now I've got $60 in the
Invested.
guitar
Yep.
invested, and I gave it to Waylon for Christmas in 1964. Had it sitting on the bandstand when he came into work that evening, and a lady friend of his, who he later married, her name was Barbara Rood, she had bought him a brand new Fender Super Reverb amp on the same day. So that night he had a brand new amp and a brand new guitar to play.
Happy birthday, Waylon.
Oh, that kid he was in high con.
That is so cool. And like I said, now, isn't it funny how far that guitar has come?
That guitar was with Waylon his whole career.
Yeah, it's in so many photos. Even the famous photo of the Good Old Boys.
Yep.
That's
right.
it's a picture of his shoulders down, and just a picture of his hands and his guitar, and
Yep.
that's the guitar.
That's
you know,
it.
it's like I said, it belongs in the Country Music Hall of Fame. It belongs in Nashville behind 6 Feet of Glass.
It's an icon.
It is.
It really is.
That's so cool. And so you had it wrapped in leather.
I did.
I never even heard of people wrapping guitar.
Well,
Where'd you even come up with that?
Hank Snow, remember the old country musician?
I love Hank Snow, one of my favorites.
Hank Snow had a Martin guitar that had a leather cover on it. And I saw that one time, and I was so impressed. I thought, that would look on a Waylon's guitar, because the body was pretty well beat up from being in the trunk of Sonny's car.
Under the tire.
So rather than go to all the trouble and expense of refinishing the body, I thought, just get a leather cover put on, And so that's what happened.
I love it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That is a great story. All right, we're going to start this album right here. We're listening to JD's. This is your personal copy.
That's my personal copy.
JD's, this copy is a little different than everybody else's copy because it's personalized and autographed by Waylon Jennings.
Right.
What's that say? What's that say right there?
This says to Linda.
Linda's
my wife.
Your wife.
It says, "Happy birthday and a very happy new year to you and Paul and the baby. May you both have the best of everything. Love always, Waylon." And this was signed December 26th, which is Linda's birthday, 1966.
So 2 years after the album was released, pretty much, because
Pretty
you
much.
released it December of '64.
Yeah. Quick story about these albums.
Yeah.
When we cut this album, Jim Muschel, who owned the club, gave each of us in the band, I think he gave us 20 copies each to give out to our customers and fans of, as a
Promotion.
gift. Yeah, promotion. And I gave every one of mine away, and I had to go back and buy one 2 years later.
Jesus.
I didn't pay much for it, but
You
that's
can't
kinda
find
nice.
these out. I'm holding, you don't even know what you have right here. And it's autographed by Waylon on the
Right.
cover, but I know you're in it, and so this probably doesn't mean much to you, but
I'll sell it to you for $5.
it's sold.
I'm kidding.
I know. No, this is where so much of, I'm a huge music collector. I'm pushing 4,000 records.
Wow.
And I literally have a huge collection.
I know you do, yeah.
It rivals the vault here at the station. And one album I do not have is this album. And I've looked a long time for this album. This is Waylon Jennings' debut album.
Right.
And you're on it. I know you're so like, oh, it's not a big deal, but this is a big deal, man. Like I so much appreciate you coming in, and
Well, that was a long time ago.
it is, but just one of those things, man. You're part of history forever, And
I
on this
suppose.
album, you do lead vocals on one of the songs,
I do.
Lorraine.
I do all of the tenor work on Waylon songs. I do all the high parts on all that album.
All the backup vocals.
All the
with
backup
high
vocals,
parts.
yeah. That's just the four of us right there.
And who's all part of the band right now?
Okay. There was Waylon, of course, and another interesting thing, there were four of us.
Yes.
And there was 1 year between each four of us. Waylon was the oldest, I was next, Jerry was next, and Richie was the baby.
And Richie's the drummer, and he's the only one still alive. along with
That's
yourself.
correct. Richie lives, or he did live in Peach Holler, Tennessee. He still lives in Tennessee, but I'm not sure of the town. He still plays some.
And he pretty much hung out with Waylon through pretty much his whole career.
Pretty much, yeah. Richie was single, and he stayed with Waylon for a long, long time. And Jerry, he was our left-handed rhythm guitar player, and he sang a lot with Waylon. He had a real deep baritone voice. And
When did Jerry pass away?
early 80s,
Okay.
or say mid-80s.
So he was the first to go.
Yes, yeah. And then he came up to see me. I was here in Payson, and Linda and I were reading a newspaper one day, and it said, appearing at the local bar, which was back then the Winchester, or the one next door. What was it called now?
It's on our show.
Yeah. Whatever. Anyway, Jerry was playing there with a band called Buffalo Hump. And it said Jerry Gropp and Buffalo Hump. And I told him, I said, there can only be one Jerry Gropp in the world.
Absolutely.
So we went down, and he didn't know I was up here. And so I walked in, and
Like
old times, yeah. So we spent a couple of days reminiscing, and he went to New Mexico to visit his daughter, got sick over there, took him to the hospital, they released him, and a couple of days later he went back to the hospital, and that was his demise.
Of course, Jerry was the partier of the band, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, Jerry was,
You live hard, yeah, and yeah.
live fast, love hard, and die young. That was Jerry.
There it is.
Yeah.
And so that's cool. Let's get this started. You kick off the album with Crying. It's a Roy Orbison tune.
Right.
Where did you come up with the lineup for side one? It's all classic rock songs. You guys even cover a Bob Dylan song.
Those were songs that we did every night at JD's. We did those songs live every night. When we went to the studio, we went through that album one time. We played each song one time, right straight through, because we knew the songs. We had played them time after time. So that's kind of how that materialized.
That's so cool. Let's get this started. I'm going to
Okay.
kick it off. Roy Orbison Crying starts off the album.